Foundation is a charity associated with The Guardian. We're based at The Guardian, but we are editorially and financially independent from The Guardian. We're a charity that runs programmes to support free press, access to free press around the world. We also support diversity in the media, so we run a couple of schemes like this Scott Trust Bursary scheme, which you may have heard of. Yeah. And we also run programmes which upskill young people in critical thinking and news literacy, and also to engage young people in the news. So I go into schools all over the UK in primary schools, and I find that most schools don't give children an opportunity to talk about the news and to ask questions about things they're seeing, reading and hearing. And young people are worried about what's happening, and just recently a teacher was telling me that young people had heard that World War III was about to start and they were really anxious. After the Manchester Arena bombing, lots of children, especially in Manchester, had questions. And there's nowhere for them to go. So we're finding that young people have an appetite to hear about the news, and teachers need the skills and the resources to give them a space to do that. We're also finding that lots of young people, especially in homes in more deprived areas, don't get a chance to talk about the news at home either. And so we've begun to run workshops to give parents the skills to help their children discuss the news. So lots of kind of digital skills, social media skills, but not many critical thinking skills on display. Their sense of right and wrong, of fair and unfair is really pure when you're at a primary school. If something's not fair. Yeah, so when we go into schools, we see a range of issues. So we know from research that young people in this age group, 8, 9, 10, 11, are starting to go online and have social media profiles. But what we hope and what we see is that they haven't reached the age where they've really embedded some bad habits, some habitual liking, following, sharing without analysing what they're looking at. And that's why we want to work with this age group. We think it's really important to embed these skills as soon as they're online independently. We see young people who don't know that opinion and fact are different things. We see young people who have no concept of bias or the fact that there are values behind news organisations which contribute to those biases. And we see children who have no idea how to tell what's fake and what's real, and who are making snap decisions about news and information based on often a photo or a headline and not looking any further. And I have to say that's not just children. We know from research that adults are also struggling with all of those issues too. I think it's really important that projects like NewsWise work with schools all over the UK. So the broadcasters, the news organisations are based in London, in Salford, in Leeds. And what it's really important that we get out to the furthest corners of the UK. And that's why it's really great to work with journalism students here at Falmouth. Because they know the community, they often have links to local schools, so they can engage local schools. But what they can bring is a sense of authentic newsworthiness, authentic journalism, their experiences and their stories, and an understanding of what pure journalism at its heart really is. That journalism isn't necessarily vlogging or sharing your opinions or unwrapping a box that's just arrived in the post, that journalism can hold power to account and can give people a voice who otherwise are voiceless. That's really important, and to share that with young people, the real values of journalism, is what the students here can do, and they can do en masse because they're here in the local community. I think students have a lot to get out of outreach, not just NewsWise, but any project. I think for young people at university, it's a chance to really engage with the community you're in. I think sometimes at university, certainly from my experience, it can be like a bubble, and you live just within your university community. And this is a way to understand the community and the local issues that surround you, and to really tap into those local voices and hear local voices, to engage with your future audience. So these young people now will be the audiences of the future, and if we don't engage them in news now, we may never bring them back. And we know that organisations like the BBC are really struggling to engage a younger audience. And it's a chance to really hone their skills, their editorial judgment, their understanding of their mission and how they carry out that mission, and make that accessible for young people, so to really articulate what they're doing, what they're studying and why. I think it's a really good question to ask. How much can one workshop or one unit of work really do to affect change? And I think we're very aware that this is a starting point. In some brilliant cases, what we've seen is that children are engaged in news for the first time, and they want to set up a school newspaper, or they want to have a school news club or a school radio news club. And that's amazing to continue. That's legacy longer term. But what we do every school we visit, we also train the teachers so that this becomes part of learning, not just while they're doing NewsWise, but throughout everything they're doing. And actually teachers tell us anecdotally that this affects not just other lessons, so it taps into things like history and first source and second source evidence, but it also taps into issues in the playground. So a teacher told us there was a dispute over a football match, and there was a big class row, and they used the NewsWise lesson looking at different points of view to hear both sides of the argument and resolve their dispute. So I think by training the teachers, not just delivering a workshop and leaving, we're hoping that this has long-term effects. But of course, this is just primary school, and we need this to be in the curriculum throughout, I would say, Key Stage 2 and into secondary school as well. This has to be embedded throughout education and not just a one-off thing. We're funded by Google. At the moment, solely funded by Google, and what that allows us to do is offer NewsWise for free. So it allows us to put lots of work into travel and reaching communities that we wouldn't normally reach. In terms of Google's involvement, they have no editorial oversight of any of the resources, and we're really careful that the Google logo isn't on any of the resources that we show to young people. So Google fund lots of projects around the world, and in the UK we're one of 2 at the moment. And from my point of view, that allows us access to communities that we don't normally reach.
And are you feeding back to them formally, or do they seek feedback on what you're finding amongst kids on the level of literacy or media literacy or not?
So Google do ask for feedback in terms of numbers reached, and we evaluate everything we do. So obviously they're looking for us to demonstrate impact, but we're not feeding back informally anything about what we find from young people. And we found some really interesting habits and ideas from young people. So one young person told me that fake news is what journalists do when there's nothing happening. And so we find some really interesting ideas, but we aren't feeding those back actually to Google at all, but we are sharing those ideas with other people that we meet, especially news organisations and universities and things like that.